Our next guest has devoted a large portion of her writing career to counseling others. Her syndicated advice column, Sense and Sensitivity, has helped countless readers navigate all kinds of situations. Now Harriette Cole is helping people learn how to ignite their dreams. Welcome, Harriette. First, let me begin with your agony aunt hat on.
Okay.
And ask you, you spent 15 years writing your advice column. What kind of advice would you have for the teens who are trying to navigate the tragedy last week in Florida, or indeed for survivors of other similar events who must go into a terrible state when these things happen?
You know, I've watched many of the young people stand up, speak out, so beautifully articulate about what they're thinking and feeling and needing to say, that I want to say good for you. And for any young people who might be in the same situation and watching them, they are an excellent example. This is actually the first example of young people, so many of them speaking out, that we've seen in news coverage, at least to my knowledge, and I pay close attention to it. And I think it happened because the government officials weren't saying anything. So let the children speak, and they're not children, let the teenagers speak. So what I would say to others is, have the courage to say what's on your heart. As your previous guest said, make a plan. I would say right now the momentum is building. Talk to each other now. If you could do anything that you could imagine in order to change the narrative and to change the rules, what would it be? And that big vision is what will propel our country in a new direction. I really think so. They have the ability, even though they can't vote yet, they can mobilize in a way that will get others to listen, or let's pray that they can.
Let me ask that question in a different way. So I think you have a teenage daughter?
I do.
What do you say to your daughter about, is she worried about going to school?
We talked about it. So she goes to a school that has a lot of security measures in place.
Right.
When you walk in the door, you cannot get through without a turnstile, that you have a card key or something. There is a guard at the door. I don't believe he's armed, but there is a guard. And she said to me she feels safe in her school.
That's great.
Because of the safeguards that are in place. Now she's 14, so she's moving about in the city a bit, in New York City. And we talked about what would happen. I saw a 14-year-old, the mother of a 14-year-old crying in agony on TV, and my daughter's 14.
Yeah.
And I said to my daughter, I don't know whether I could live if something like this happened to you. And she said, well, for that mommy has 2 other children, so she has no choice. She was matter of fact, crystal clear, and what that told me is that the conviction that our children have is something that we could be reminded of. You know, you have to face the cards that you are dealt, and how are you going to face them? She was clear, and she said in her school they've had marches, they've had silent marches in honor of victims in the past, and we'll see what they do this time.
I want to turn to the other part of your professional life and ask you about Dreamleapers. Tell me about Dreamleapers.
Dreamleapers is an educational platform designed to help people access and activate their dreams. And we do a number of things. We have workshops where guided meditations and vision boarding. We did perfecting your elevator pitch, how to finance your dream, all kinds of workshops, as well as what I call the Dreamleapers Talk, where I talk to someone who has risen to a level of success in his or her life and who's willing to talk about how did you get there?
What the path was.
What the path was, you know, what the stumbling blocks were, right, what the supports were, so that others, not just to say, oh, this is nice, but what can I learn for myself? And so this week, on Thursday, I'll be interviewing Bethann Hardison.
Well, first off, remind us a little bit about who Bethann Hardison is.
So she calls herself a fashion revolutionary, which I love. She was part of the original supermodels before they were called that. She participated in what was the Battle of Versailles, when the American designers were kind of facing off with the European designers in 1973. This was the first time that American designers were taken seriously. So she was part of that movement. She and Iman are close friends. She was one of the first people to meet Iman and help her navigate her life here. She had a modeling agency called Bethann Management that was focused on the diaspora of models. And she discovered Naomi Campbell and Tyson Beckford, among others. And in recent years, she launched a campaign which was very powerful, saying to the fashion industry, to designers, you do not have enough models of color on the runway. Shame on you. And that, who knows what that would have done? You know, this is a powerful industry that she took on.
What impact do you want your conversation with Bethann Hardison to have?
I want the people in the room to understand that if you have the courage to make those choices for yourself that you feel are resonating in your heart, then the path does clear. And this is the biggest thing for people. When I talk to them about their dreams, I'm afraid it's not valuable enough. I'm afraid that I won't be successful. When you see somebody that not only was successful, but is also fearless, I think that that can help you to have a little bit more courage.
We've got a little bit of time left, so let me ask you, what's the one story you're dying to have her share with you and your audience?
Oh, that's a good one. Standing up to the industry, standing up to the international fashion industry, and what happened. Because what I know happened is that they changed. And she won an award from the very industry, from the Council of Fashion Designers of America, for her courage. This shows you that being courageous, even as it relates to race relations, does not mean that people necessarily will close the door. They opened the door, they made a change. I can't wait for her to tell that story.
Harriette Cole, thanks so much for coming and talking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.